Welcome to another episode of X-Ray University podcast, and I'm here today with my good friend Chris Torrioni from Sensible Micro. Thanks for being with us today, Chris.
Absolutely, Bill. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
I know it's been so long, and we have so much to talk about. Let's get started from the beginning, because at the end, what we really want to explore is the chip shortage. Right? We've gone through some really rough times in our supply chains, and if you a year and a half, 2 years ago, if you're trying to buy a car or a dishwasher, they just disappeared from stores. But I want to start with you, Chris. Let's go back to your entrepreneurial journey, right? It's something I'm very passionate about, and I know you are too. Tell us about Sensible Micro and how did you get started, and to the point where you're really successful today.
Sure. Yeah, it's an interesting journey for sure. I got into this industry by accident, really. I had just graduated college from the University of Central Florida. My first job was an IT recruiter.
IT recruiter?
An IT recruiter.
Wow.
In a brand new Tampa location, and we had zero business. So we basically were interviewing people all day long for jobs we didn't have to offer. And,
that's perfect.
I'm like, this is what the real world's about.
Yeah.
I was in a suit and tie from 7 in the morning till 7 at night, making $24,000 a year. And I was like, all right, there's got to be a better way. And just by accident, I was having lunch with a buddy. And he's like, we're working, we're selling parts over at this distributor in Tampa, and we need sales assistants. And so he's like, if you're not afraid of the phone and you like selling, he's like, you can do pretty well. And so I was like, I don't care. I'll try anything.
Yeah.
Get me out of this current venture. And that's how I started. I started with a local distributor. I was a sales assistant, faxing POs, expediting POs, trying to revive old accounts. So just cold calling all day long, trying to get people on the phone, trying to get them to like me, trust me, and give me a shot. And I had a knack for it. Within 3 months, they put me into sales, and within a year, I was a sales manager.
Wow.
At 23 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, well, we might have to put a link for the young people watching this, what a fax machine is. They might not know what fax is.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago, Chris.
I was cold calling out of the source book. You remember the source book?
I remember the source book. That was a long time ago. Well, not that long ago. We're not that old, but still old enough. So you're doing well, right? At 23, I'm sure you're making quite a bit of money. Explain to me that bug in your gut, right? That told you that there was something else out there.
Yeah, the company I worked for, they were great. Great guys, give you my start, but I literally couldn't sleep at night thinking about starting my own venture. The first month I was there, I would get there an hour before the office opened because I was so excited, and I'd just be resting against the door waiting for somebody to let me in. And like a month into it, the sales manager brought me a key one day. He's like, dude, you're making me look bad. Just let yourself in and get started. So,
that is awesome.
I just, it was one of those things. I kept a journal. First time in my life I ever kept a journal. And I would write in this journal about this industry and this opportunity and things that I wanted to do. And I couldn't shake it. It was in me. It's all I thought about. And, my dad was retiring with IBM after 30 years. He had not been exposed to the component industry at all. And I used to say to him, like, I think we can do this better. There's companies out there. This industry is really weird. It's really great, but it's also really weird. There's a lot of companies that, they're just flipping chips.
Yeah.
They're just trying to make a transaction. They're not focused on customer service. They're not focused on quality. They're just, and there's tons of them. And, I'm like, there's a better way. And that's, how the name Sensible came about, because
That's perfect.
nothing really made sense to me. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And so he and I started the company back in 2005.
Wow. Now, going back to the early 2000s, right, the industry was much different than it is today. Who were the players? I mean, who were the people, like you described, flipping chips at the time?
Well, you had a lot of stocking distributors that were good companies, right? There was golly, the names back then. I think Quest was still around. Prism was still around.
Mm-hmm.
Companies like that, where I'm not sure if they did a lot of direct OEM business, but they certainly had channels to access an access program. But in the late 90s, there was a lot of spin-off companies, especially here in Florida. It was like mothership out of St. Petersburg gave birth to I don't know how many companies in the area.
Just like,
and I did not come from there, but it was super saturated. I'm sure you remember.
Yeah.
So it was a bunch of sales guys who started companies, and that's what I was. I was a sales guy who thought, hey, I could run a company, I could start a company. But I don't know. It seemed to have worked out for me.
Yeah, because so one question I have is, what did it take at the time to start a company, a component distributor? Other than a phone number and some books and some contacts. What did it take to start a company for you?
Yeah, the barrier to entry was not a lot, right? You needed a phone, you needed a computer, you needed a way to inspect parts, although the inspection process back then was, checking to make sure the leads weren't damaged, you got the right part and packaged properly. It was very, very basic stuff. The quality infrastructure that you need today is eons compared to what you needed back then, right? And so I grew up in that environment where you had good companies selling parts, and sometimes they were bad or sometimes they were damaged, and you got, hopefully you caught it in-house and it didn't get to the customer.
Yeah.
But over time, we just started outsourcing. In the very early days, we had, a couple local companies that we would work with. And that took time, it took money. And we didn't put in our own in-house lab facility until 2011. We built our new headquarters, and then we opened in 2012 that location.
Which is a beautiful location, by the way. It's just gorgeous. Did you?
Thank you.
When another investment is actually inventory, right? When did that start for you guys?
You mean bringing in inventory?
Yeah.
Probably around, 7 years into owning the business, we had moved 3 separate times. And the last time is when we built our facility. We have almost 4 acres of land. We overbuilt on purpose because we were growing so quickly. We didn't have any more room for inventory. And we certainly didn't have room in our old facility for all the lab analysis and equipment that we needed. But we started, I would say 2008, 2009, we started buying excess. We started partnering with customers, trying to schedule out, trying to do, small consignment deals. It was never a big focus. It was just kind of part of the relationship.
Gotcha.
Hey, we have excess. Are you guys interested in it? Do you want to buy it? No, we're not sure if it's really good material. Maybe we'll just consign it.
Yeah.
And so, it started quite a bit ago, but now, it's a different level, different game.
Yeah. Now, the other thing I really I'm interested, that when COVID hit, you guys, of course, in a much more comfortable position. The company's mature. Talk to me about that process. How the pandemic impacted you guys internally, right? How did it impact you with your customers? And how did you deal through that nightmare that were those first few months, and then, what have we seen so far?
Yeah, it was super crazy at first, right? Everyone didn't know what to do. So, like a lot of companies, we immediately we just sent everybody home to work remote. And thank God we have an amazing IT director who had us up and running within a day or two.
It's one of those things you're like, oh, that's why we have an IT guy. Now I know why. You never know why you have, right? Yeah. Until you actually need them.
I mean, he's Johnny on the spot. He was unbelievable, the way that we were able to just navigate super quickly. Because we had, I think, 5 or 6 customers under the Defense Production Act building ventilators.
Wow. So they needed parts. They couldn't stop. Yeah. Busier than ever.
They needed parts. They needed them quick. And we were able to support them, and which was good for us because, nobody was doing anything for at least the first few months into COVID. It was just a standstill.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really, really fortunate. I was concerned because we had never tried remote work before. And, you don't know how people are going to adapt to that.
Exactly.
If you're going to be able to function well. Some people can work great on their own and at home. And some people, they can't. They need to be around people, and they need more focus, and it's just different, right? But our team is great. We even have remote schedules now for the team because we've just carried it through, and they're professionals at what they do, and they can handle it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you still carry on for some functions, right? A more hybrid approach for scheduling.
Yeah, the inspection team, warehouse team, obviously they have to be on site, right?
Yeah.
We had socially distanced all their workstations in the lab and in the inspection areas because they were really the only ones in the building, and myself and maybe a few others.
Yeah. And how long, whatever we call some level of normalcy in the market, right? How long did you see things settling in? How long did it take for things to settle in a little bit more?
Settle in from working remote?
No, I mean, in general for the market, right? For the ability to source parts and to get them delivered on time.
During COVID?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me think about this. I want to say things started smoothing out towards the end of summer a little bit.
Okay.
Afterwards. I really don't recall that much.
It's all blur, right? It's all blur.
It really is. It really is. I mean, things started really picking up towards the end of 2020. I do remember that. And then 21 and was insane. And then 22 was even crazier, right?
Yeah. And one thing that we noticed, we're not in this market, of course, but we're kind of in the market adjacent, right? Because we're supplier to the market. And we've seen, it was very interesting how COVID was a water divider for a lot of component distributors, right? It was a tale of winners and losers. We had good, well-managed companies like yours who were able to strive, right? And take advantage of a challenging time to push forward and get better. And we're also seeing some companies that didn't make it, right? That were not as well managed or were facing some troubles. And COVID was just the thing that pushed them over the edge, right? In general, how do you think the industry changed because of COVID?
Yeah, I certainly think it divided some of the players out, right?
Yeah.
The POs and the financial requirements to support customers, especially Fortune 500 customers, and the payment terms that you're used to having with certain vendors, overseas vendors, where we've got net terms with everybody. A lot of that changed very quickly on a dime. And so distributors that couldn't float those deals or maneuver quickly to float those deals, they got left out because contract manufacturers, the OEMs, especially the OEMs, who took over the buying.
Yeah.
In a lot of these instances, they weren't waiting. They were just placing POs and they were going. It was just panic buying nonstop, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing today, right? I mean, you saw people purchase 2 years worth of material.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of the market we're in now. It's this sluggish hangover from COVID and all the frenzy buying, stockpiling parts. And now demand has slowed up. And so you've got a ton of active demand out there that companies are considering excess. They don't want to necessarily sell it off, but they also don't want to be carrying it, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, it's stuff they will need, right? But so is it the case where the timeline just got stretched for using that specific amount of inventory? So they thought they're going to go through inventory in 6 months, and it's kind of, demand is softer, and like, well, it's not going to be 6 months, it might be a year and a half. So and that goes back to our initial question, which is the chip shortage, right? Is it over, right? Are companies able to find what they need in a timely manner?
Yeah, I think it just depends, right? So you had companies who, remember the first months of COVID, people were panic buying toilet paper?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Crazy. Hand sanitizer, right? Webcams. I remember looking for a webcam to buy for the team and couldn't find a webcam to. Right? It's crazy.
Yeah. So I think it's a combination of things, right? You had pent-up demand. You had the consumer electronics market going absolutely bonkers. Kids were, webcamming in to do school from home. You had people spending more time at home. You had all these electronic devices getting upgraded, and that was just crazy, right?
Yeah.
So you had true pent-up demand happening, and then you also had the panic buying. How bad is this going to get? They're saying it's 52 weeks, but maybe it's 94 weeks, to get our parts. So people stockpiled parts, and they had to sign a bunch of NCNRs from their normal supply chain, so they're covered. But now those parts are showing up, and the factories are authorized to saying you got to take these parts. And so it's a combination of things. I think it's a really weird market because you still have certain product lines, microcontrollers and MOSFETs and things that are just completely still insanely, 50 weeks plus. And then you've got other product lines that have certainly, dropped. Mm-hmm. But it depends on, I guess, your planning process and how well you were able to jump in front of this in the early days. If the shortage is over for you, right? So It may be over for one company, but it may be completely insane for another company, and it just depends on what that looks like.
So
we're seeing, from our standpoint, we still see a tremendous amount of demand.
Yeah.
But the pricing hasn't come down. In fact, it's gone up on certain commodities where the pricing was bonkers to begin with, and now it's insanely bonkers on some of these chips.
I love how you have levels of bunkers. It went from normal bunkers to insane bunkers.
Just when you thought it couldn't get any more crazy.
Wait, there's more.
Yeah. And so customers, they can't absorb that kind of PPV. Like, it's insane. And we get it. The demand is still there. We're still looking for the hardest of the hardest chips. And when they pop up and we can get them, we get them for them. But, it's just a strange market. The sense of urgency has diminished, right? You don't see the larger POs coming over and the volumes that they were coming over in. But the demand is still good. But it's just a weird market. You got inflation, you got interest rates rising. There's a lot of uncertainty, and so that tapers things way down.
What new opportunities this economic landscape offers for you guys?
Yeah, I think the value add is a big opportunity for us.
which is something you guys were doing before this whole thing started, right? So you were able to put in overdrive. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, and we're able to tweak certain programs, certain inventory management programs, things, OEMs, they need a true partner that's really thinks outside the box, because everybody's business is different. They don't want to go through what they went through, for the past 2+ years. They need to have that flexibility. They need to have somebody who's nimble, who can handle their business in a different way, and really be that go-between, just managing crisis parts, but also, dealing with the contract manufacturers. A lot of them are not set up to be able to handle the sourcing requirements for a critical shortage, move quickly. So we put together custom programs and things that make sense for them, so they don't have to be put in that box and go, oh no, what do we do? Just go out and buy with your hair on fire.
Yeah.
And so we see value add everywhere. I mean, it's tremendous for us.
Because not only, even if they had, right, a program, even if they have a process, that process is likely obsolete by now, right? And that's where you guys can help both from the sell and the buy side of things, right? If a company has too much inventory, right, and maybe doesn't want to sit on inventory for a year and a half or two, and then for people who need parts, yesterday to keep. So it's very interesting. And that's going to be my last question. Looking back, right, what prepared you to be in this position that you are today, to take advantage of this crisis that killed so many people, that made you stronger?
I think us just having our team, first and foremost, you have people on your team who don't treat this as just a job. Like, they truly, truly care about what they do. We've got our core values bolted to our wall right on our floor. We've got our mission statement, which says we exist to help overburdened manufacturers win. It's right there in front of their face every day, and they truly operate that way. We're a family-run company. We treat people like family. And I think when you have that kind of culture, it's just a different environment. People respond differently. They take their jobs with passion, and they truly try to do the right thing and deliver for the customer in the right way. And so, without the team that we have, I don't know how we would have done in another, circumstance. But, we're very fortunate. We try really, really hard to have the right environment, the right atmosphere, and it's worked out tremendous for us.
That's awesome, Chris. Thank you so much for your time. Man, we'll have to set up another time to chat. There's too much to talk about. But this was awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. And we'll be back with more of our podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Thanks.